Bad news, boys. Astro costs money now. What am I talking about? Well, they have a database. Wait, isn't Astro a framework? Things are going to get real interesting here. We need to take a look at Astro DB, the newest database competitor built on top of Firebase. Wait, what? There's a lot going on here. Astro DB, the database platform for content-driven websites. Astro DB is a fully managed SQL database that is fast, lightweight, and ridiculously easy to use. Get started for free. No credit card required, cancel anytime. Not going to get rug pulled, right? Right? Anyways, we could scroll through here and learn a bunch about it, and we'll probably come back and do that eventually. Why would we do that when we could just get started? You have the option to import from a GitHub repo, create from template, CLI, or empty project, and I'm realizing I don't know enough to do this confidently the way they recommend, so we're going to go through their docs instead. First, it looks like we need an Astro project, so let's go initialize one. That cute old CLI. Where should we create the new project? First, I need to decide the name for it. Firebase. We'll include the sample files. Yes. Do I go strictest? I go strictest. Let's be real. Install deps, initialize. Hey, let's get going. And we can see that localhost 3000 is not the right port because it's 4321 because they wanted to be cute. And I'll give it to them. It's cute. And here is a basic, boring, empty Astro project. We want to do things to this, so let's do those things. Open a new side panel there. Go back to the docs. You're missing a button here. Hey, Ben. Psst, Ben. You built a product for early adopters. Where's the early adopter option? I'll put money on it. I'll bet. I was about to say I'm not a betting man, but I am. I'd put $1,000 down that Astro has a higher percentage of Bun users than Yarn users. It is not by a little bit either. Like, I am positive Astro, just by being a newer thing with enthusiasts, has more Bun users than Yarn. Like, for sure. But yeah, I'll change it myself. Cool. We're scaffolding. What are you talking about? It's absolutely built on Firebase. Fake news. Don't believe their lies. Obviously, Glauber wants everyone to believe that they're using Torso because he made Torso. It's very obviously Firebase. Like, duh. Look at it. It's based, and they have fire in their logo. Just look at the Astro logo. See that? That's fire. You're going to tell me that a company that's logo has fire in it is using Torso and not Firebase for their database. Come on. I didn't know y'all were so gullible. Anyways, let's actually try this out. Cool. I've added the database. Now I have to define it. So we have db config. Happy they made that change. I could do a long rant about the things that I didn't love with the initial version, which I'm lucky enough to get to demo, but they're making a lot of fixes here. This actually looks really nice. Now we can define tables. So let's define a table. Define table, column, find table is a comment. Cool. Let's just yoink. So now you have comment, which is a table that has columns, including author, likes, flagged, published, metadata. Cool. Now we need that to be in the table. So I copy that, paste it. Cool. Now I have a table with a comment, which has all of these things. Table reference. This is how you build references between things. So you can set an ID on a table and then link it using this. Pretty nice, simple syntax. SQL for TypeScript devs that don't want to learn SQL. If the syntax looks a little familiar, it's because it's very, very much Drizzle inspired. They've effectively built a wrapper on top of Drizzle. Astro DB includes a built-in Drizzle ORM client. There's no setup or manual configuration to use said client. Nice and easy. But first, we have to actually put things in the database. So let's do that. So we hop in here, seed. One of the really cool things with Astro DB is that you can import the things that you've defined in your table, like here. These get added to the definition for Astro DB, so you don't have to do all the work to make sure you have everything in the right places. It's just going to be there. So now I have comment. It has everything we need. If I want to seed it, I can just copy paste this code. What is this mad about? Update the schema and have just author ID and body. That sounds about right to me. Cool. Yeah, this is out of date. And I'll change that to body and we will delete the rest. Cool. And hopefully, text versus int. Yeah, that's a good point. That's thank you for the call out there. I would have missed that for a minute. So author ID is now a number, body is now text. There we go. The DOM server will automatically restart your database whenever this file changes, regenerate your types, and seed the data from seed. Oh, cool. So just doing that, new local database created. And if I save this file again, will it happen again? If I add a third, and we'll make the text here, please subscribe. Subs are free, by the way. Cool. And that did not seem to do anything different here. Is there a local studio that I can run, boys? It's HMR, it's just running. Well, it'd be cool if it said here, reseeding, by the way, so I know that the seed's been rerun. Regardless, I want to actually play. So let's hop into source, pages, index. And again, the magic is you can import your models from Astro DB without having to import them from specific things. If I compare this to a generic project that's using something like, in this case, straight up Drizzle, then any of the code that does insertions, in here I have upload component. No, actually, backend would. Cool. So if I go to my backend code here, an upload thing, which if you haven't used it, best way to do file uploads in full stack projects. On upload complete, await db.insert images values. This is coming from my server DB schema. So I have this defined in my code base. I have to import from this, as well as importing the DB client, as well as importing anything I need specifically from Drizzle. Having this all be framework level, so you have one import for all of it, is a really, really nice little change that doesn't seem big, but when you consider most projects have one database, this makes a lot of sense. I'm actually quite happy with this. Cool. So now we have comments. We're not using them. Let's use them. There's a lot of cool junk here. I don't want any of it. Cool. And now, if all worked correctly, that's pretty cool. Without terminating my dev environment a single time, this has been open since I started recording this video. I was able to set up a database, get it running, and then HMR my way to success. That's really cool. I've never seen a database set up from scratch that was anywhere near that simple. But that's obviously not where the magic happens. The magic happens once you have to deploy this. So let's keep reading along and figure out what the next steps are. Obviously, all the other things you'd expect from Drizzle, like inserting, filtering, all of Drizzle's fancy utilities like equal and greater than and all that are all included in Astro DB, all from one import. Still really handy. You even do batch transactions where you push a bunch of queries together and then call a batch, which calls all of those queries. Super, super handy. But we want to play with Studio. So let's do that. There are two ways to create a project in Astro Studio. First one is Astro Link. Let's try that out. Bunx Astro Link. Bunx Astro DB login. That was easy. No, I don't want to link it to an existing project. I want to make a new project. New project's name, Firebase, US West, OP region. Nothing's changed here really. There's an env DTS with some slight changes for that. That's from before though. And the Astro config has the DB call, which was added before. But you'll see there isn't really much that's changed here. Mostly just an external link. So what do we do next? Well, we have to push the database. Once again, y'all are missing a button. Bunx Astro DB push. Database schema is out of date. Pushing, push complete. Cool. If you guys aren't familiar with a DB push pattern, something I've pushed for really heavily back from the Planet Scale days, but still use every day now. I think migrations are an out-of-date pattern because we have the history of our database schema. It's our Git history. We don't need to encode that in two places. We don't need to encode the changes in the schema and then how it changed in a migration and then run 100 migrations before we can actually work in the code base. Makes no sense at all. DB push is, hey, there are things that are different about that schema in my schema. I'm going to change them. And if it's anything destructive, I'm going to warn the shit out of you first. Much simpler pattern, especially for getting started and doing things like this. You just push the changes and you're good. I have a whole video about why I don't love migrations. If you search Theo migrations on YouTube, I'm sure that will come up quickly. A breaking schema change must be made. Add the force reset flag to reset all production data. Scary, but I understand. Pushing data. You may need to push data to your Studio database for seeding or data migrations. You can author a TS file with the Astro DB module to write type-safe queries, then execute the file against your Studio database using Astro DB execute file path -- remote. Cool, let's try this. Bunx. Now we see we have Firebase Astro. All of the things we'd expect here, including, ta-da, quick ask from the Astro folks in chat. This is embedded Drizzle Studio, right? Or did you build your own, yet another table for viewing your database? They built their own with TanStack table, according to everyone's favorite, Ben Holmes. Very good to know. Appreciate the heads up. People are upset about the light mode. I know you guys are trying to make money on this. You know, $10 a month for dark mode is not a bad deal. It's not TanStack table. Go to this panel by hand. So this is what they're paying you for, Maple. This has been your role the whole time. I get it. Let's just write this out so people can know for real. The Astro DB stack, Firebase, Java, and TanStack table. That's the stack you guys used, right? Pretty Firebase if I do say so myself. Oh, Kubernetes, of course. How can I forget Kubernetes? I need a good emoji for Kubernetes. Perfect. And also Firebase used to be a fire emoji. Perfect. Flutter? You guys are using Flutter too? That's dope. What a stack. Proud of you guys. Because people have recently been struggling to understand when I'm joking, at least the Redditors have been, I'll be very clear quickly. Astro DB is built on top of Astro, a custom-made table that Maple slaved over, SQLite on top of Terso, and Drizzle. It's a pretty cool stack. In fact, there's even a blog post that is a deep dive on this whole stack. Yesterday, we launched a fully managed SQL database service designed exclusively for the Astro Web Framework. Let's dive into the implementation details of Astro DB, how it works, why we built it, and why we're adopting libSQL. Okay, important correction. It's technically not SQLite. It's libSQL, which is a fork of SQLite that has been modernized and adds a bunch of really nice features. Cool stuff. How we got here. Astro is unique for its focus on building content-driven websites. The center of this is, of course, content, which is why Astro 2.0, we shipped content collections. Our users loved it as a way to manage their local content. This is a really important thing that I think gets missed in the framework wars. Content websites have kind of been left behind in the pursuit of apps, especially the single-page app era where React took over everything. Gatsby was a quick and rough attempt at making React work more for content sites. When I say content site, what I'm referring to is things like documentation or blogs or places that have a lot of photos and photo galleries, things that are less described by their interactivity and how regularly things change, and more about the content itself that is the core of the page. Marketing sites are another great example too. The new Next model is great in the sense that you don't have to ship as much JavaScript, if any at all, in order to have content on a page, and it scales much better to these large content type things. But WordPress was the standard for a reason. It made all of this really easy to do. And Astro's goal here isn't to compete with Next.js or certainly not React on the client. It's always been bring back the essence of what we loved WordPress for and make something really, really nice for it. Oh, I didn't even see they said WordPress here. WordPress has always been a huge inspiration for us. One of the things that makes WordPress so special is that it has a built-in database. You're not just managing your article content. You're managing data, pages, blocks, images, and an entire ecosystem of plugins. Okay, one of my favorite things from the WordPress days was prefixes. What the hell is a prefix? Why would you want that on a database? Why'd you throw this in front of all of your table names? Well, it meant you could store more than one project in a database, which was actually really nice. If you just have different prefixes for different projects, you could have a lot of different projects in just one database, which is really, really nice, especially when certain services like remove their free tiers or only offer one database, or you have one DB that's way over provisioned, you can throw a bunch of things at it. You'll see I have gallery tutorial as the prefix, which means I can share this Postgres database with like a bunch of other projects and just have everything isolated with those prefixes. Really, really nice. Someone in chat also pointed out, very fairly, that it also helps with multi-sites because it adds the site ID in the prefix. Just super, super handy if you have one database hosting a bunch of, WordPress sites, Astro sites, or any other content-y type stuff. It's actually a really nice pattern to use one database for a bunch of things. Just one of the many examples of WordPress isms that I feel have been too far left behind that I still love and use regularly. Enough tangents about WordPress and old patterns and database architecture. We want to talk about Astro DB. According to them, they wanted something like this for Astro, but they quickly realized that they'd reached the limit of how far static repo data could take them. This bit about static repo data is important because previously Astro and its content patterns largely relied on what you included in the repo itself. Linking to an external source to generate content on the fly wasn't something they'd really built for. The solution was that you would make every page dynamic and then fetch it from somewhere else, which made it not much better than other frameworks. But the point of Astro wasn't to be as good as other frameworks, it was to be way better than those frameworks for content specifically, which is why they built what they did here. Finding and losing SQLite. Oh boy. In an effort to evolve content collections with data collections and references, we realized that what we were doing was building a database like ORM from the file system. We ran into several challenges doing so. Core team member Erica brought up the idea, why don't we just use a database like SQLite? We fell in love with the idea of a lightweight database built into Astro itself. SQLite was perfect for the read-heavy workloads of most content-driven websites. This is another big point. Content has thousands of reads per write, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions. You're fetching the content way more often than you're changing it in almost all of these content site examples. Even something like YouTube, there are way more reads than writes. Because when you scroll through the comments, you have to read all of those comments. And when you write a comment, it's just making one change. And for every user that goes to the video, hundreds of things are read for the slight chance one person writes a change. Also, shout out to Erica, who is in chat. Congratulations, and you had a really positive impact on Drizzle and Astro and all of the things here. Just from the conversations I had with Fred before, yeah, this was a huge save, and you prevented the Astro team from going down some really scary rabbit holes just by pushing for that. So thank you, Erica, for preventing us from reinventing the wheel a 100th frickin' time. We prototyped the idea, but we ran into a few blockers. SQLite's a C library, so it needs native add-ons to run in Node. This is okay for local dev, but native add-ons are difficult to deploy to serverless hosts, and the startup time was worrisome. Additionally, key environments like StackBlitz would fail to run it entirely. That's a really good point. I love StackBlitz. We use them heavily for our repros and such. There are little quirks of running your whole thing in the browser that you have to think about when you're building your full stack tools. If you want someone to be able to run the backend and the front end in the browser as they're demoing things, testing things, etc., once you've resolved all the cores issues, you still have to worry about what you actually have access to. Like as Ryan Carniato just pointed out, no async local storage. Yeah, that sucks. You can't just fully emulate Node in the browser, so you have to do a subset of what Node's capable of. Defeated, we put the idea on the back burner to focus on other things. This was in spring last year. Finding and falling in love with libSQL. At the same time, halfway around the world and completely unknown to us, another team was working on this exact problem. That team was Terso, and their solution was libSQL. libSQL is a fork of SQLite that introduced a collection of improvements to the runtime while maintaining compatibility with classic SQLite. libSQL featured a modern database client for JavaScript and TypeScript that avoided the native bindings and compilation steps that plagued the rest of the ecosystem. It could even run on StackBlitz via WASM. Terso also offered hosting for libSQL databases with a specific focus on the kind of scale that we needed. More on this in a bit. A vision was starting to come together for Astro DB, but it wasn't until December 2023 that all of the pieces would finally snap into place. Designing a local database the Astro way. Astro DB gives you a fully local libSQL database as soon as you start up your dev server. With our background as a static site generator, it was important that the database could be built from scratch on startup so that in the future it could power a content layer where the data is sourced from a variety of places, including the file system. This is also a very interesting piece. A huge part of what Astro and things like it bring is the ability to source data from lots of different places and make it look better. I know one of the things I proposed Astro for is taking an old, ugly WordPress site and treating it like an API and making it look really nice. This is what Gatsby was largely promising originally with their content layer, where you could just source data from other databases, from WordPress, from random RSS feeds, and try to pull that all into one place with one messy GraphQL API. Turns out that messy GraphQL API ended up being a bit of a death sentence, but the idea of a single place that you group all of that data together for a single access layer, that stuck. That was a great idea. And it's really cool to see that idea being carried through with what Astro is doing here. When you run Astro Dev, Astro DB will automatically create an empty database at .astro/data.db, read your schema from the config, seed the database with the seed, and now you're ready to go. Love it. The workflow largely mirrors the content collections workflow that Astro users already love. Importantly, the database itself, data.db, is not persistent. It's created new from scratch every time you start up the dev server. This gives you a simple, reproducible, one-off database. That's really nice. This is another one of those interesting things they're doing different, where in almost any other project, the thought of my database getting nuked constantly is terrifying. But what they're trying to encourage here is that you're not using this database for things like authentication and really complex data that you wouldn't want to have go away. This is for static-y stuff that is used to generate web pages. And by nuking it constantly, they're teaching you to not treat your local database as this crazy source of truth with all your data in it that needs to be perfectly replicated against prod. They also don't teach you that you have to connect to the prod database or something like it to do dev. You just run it, play with it, do what you have to, update your seed if you need more data, remove things from your seed if you need less data, and go. That's cool. Astro DB brings together the web framework, the schema, the seed file, and the database itself all into a single cohesive story. We've even included an ORM for you, Drizzle. We selected Drizzle because it's type safe and it lets you get as close to the metal as you want. And it's also pluggable, which allowed us to add our own behaviors on top. Going remote with a hosted DB. This is how they make money, but it's also a nice important change where you have a good, simple way to link a project locally to a production database and all the pieces you need together working properly. Ben made a correction already. Well, we did build an app that integrates DB with Lucia Auth, though we do believe the dev story should be throwaway production hosted. Yep, sounds about right to me. Astro DB includes a hosted libSQL database that you can connect to during local dev and in production. Everything is managed for you through our Astro Studio platform. You can create a new database for your project in around 30 seconds. To achieve the kind of scale we knew we needed on our platform, we partner with Terso, who maintains libSQL and operates the largest libSQL hosting platform. You guys know you could have used Firebase, but if you want to try out this new Terso thing, feel free. Their commitment to a database per tenant model was a perfect fit for our need to spin up hundreds of thousands of databases all on demand. We also spent some time last year prototyping Cloudflare's D1 product. We liked the vision of the project, but struggled with the added abstraction layers of workers and worker bindings when all we needed was the database. We were also hesitant to build on a proprietary database technology, D1, especially if it meant building that tech into Astro itself. Ultimately, we found that D1 wasn't a good fit for our use case. I'll be honest, I haven't seen many things that D1 is a great fit for at this point in time. It's exciting and their prices are really promising, but I haven't seen anyone ship like really significant things on D1 yet. Excited to see if that changes. Zero downtime schema migrations. This is the DB push thing I was setting out earlier. Your database's schema is defined in the project db/config.ts file. When you make changes to your schema, you need to push them to your hosted database in a way that eliminates the risk of data loss and downtime. So they built Astro DB push. Kind of. You're largely leaning on push from Drizzle, but let's take a look at what you have to say. The push commands were designed to balance ease of use while still encouraging best practices that work on production large-scale projects. In Astro DB, there are no migration files to manage. Instead, when you run the push command, your schema is automatically compared against your hosted production database and any new changes are applied. If those changes can't be added safely or risk any data loss in any way, the changes will not be applied. This encourages the expand and contract migration strategy in Astro DB applications. Of course, if you're doing rapid development and don't mind resetting your database as needed, you can run Astro DB -- force reset to push up any schema changes you'd like, including a database reset. We went through a few different iterations of our schema migration system before landing on this final version. At one time, we even had a migration folder where you would manually create and check explicit migration plans into your repo. While some people prefer this model, we found it as an annoying extra step for most users to remember to go and create migrations anytime they change their schema. Yep. Migrations are obnoxious and make very little sense for very many projects if you have a Git history that includes the same data and you're willing to do expand and contract migrations. I love that they linked directly to PlanetScale for this because they've been some of the largest advocates of this model. You'd think the people who are keeping MySQL alive would care a lot about migrations, and they do, but not the old way. They're pushing this new way. And yeah, this article is great. I'm pretty sure I referenced this deeply in my Why I Don't Do Migrations video. Definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. They describe in detail the way to think about this. The big thing is backwards compatibility. So if I have a field that I want to rename, let's say, I can't just push up a new field and make it mandatory. What I would do is I'd push up a new field, make it optional. I'd make the old field optional as well. I would, once that's up, copy all the data over, make sure the new data is coming into the new field, and then go drop that old field. But it's multiple steps in terms of when you're applying changes to the database. But the result is much more control over how these things change and a generally safer deployment. It makes life much better, and we've had a much less stressful time when we stopped doing traditional migration files and instead started doing the expand and contract style migrations with a push. Wrapping up, we're happy with the balance we've found in the first iteration of Astro DB and laying the roots for future local use cases while providing an easy way to deploy production databases today. One detail left out of this article is how integrations are able to provide their own tables and data as well, which we hope to explore more as we continue down the path towards building our next iteration of content and plugins in Astro. Really cool stuff. The thing he's hinting at there is right now with Astro DB, we're defining all of the tables ourselves, but theoretically, you could add something like upload thing. And an upload thing plugin could have all of the files for your app just accessed with our data model right there. We could just embed our data model into your app through our API, and they expose it to you through their database. These are really exciting things, especially if you combine that with their cloud Astro Studio product. If I could see all of the different tables I have here, like one isn't even hosted in their database, it's just accessible through it, like my files table from upload thing or my auth table from clerk, having those as plugins inside of this one layer is really nice because joins don't need to be a thing that exists exclusively within your specific SQL dialect. A join could be between two different sources entirely, where I'm linking data from an API call to data from my database. And I'm excited that they're not just thinking about that, but they're embracing it as they go forward with Astro Studio. Studio apps are the vision for what I just described. You could create a tab on the left that exposes an uploading viewer to talk to tables behind the scenes. Really cool stuff. Oh yeah, Astro's Discord, by the way. If you guys are looking to learn more about this and talk about it with a bunch of nerds, their Discord is nuts. This is actually a really cool thing I just saw. You can export a dump of your current database, which includes the schema and all of the data, so you can move it to something else if Astro does not end up being the right thing for you. I can also see my usage, tokens. Hopefully they won't expose that immediately. The tokens to connect to your database. Cool. Webhooks. None are created. What does creating a webhook here do? Ooh. This will be triggered whenever project collections are updated. This is actually really handy. This, for those who aren't familiar, somehow with a webhook, what this will do is whenever a specific thing changes in your database, it will ping a service via URL, just post to it saying, hey, by the way, this just happened. So if you want to set up something like logs for your database or generators, tools, a Discord bot that whenever a new comment gets made, posts it in a random channel in Discord, this makes that take seconds to do instead of significantly longer. That's really cool. Also really fits into this model of like treating the Astro Studio as a source for data linking together from all sorts of places. Also, this is not centered. I thought you guys were good at UI. Anyways, to clarify, it will run whenever you add a row from the UI. It doesn't run for inserts yet. Oh, so close, but so far. Yeah, that should be called out not just in the docs, but in here too. When you create a webhook, whenever project clusters are updated from this UI, like in all caps, bold here, fix that, do better. Here is the Astro calculator. There's an example of an Astro Studio app. Beautiful. We love it. I trust this was built with Firebase, even if the rest wasn't. No, this is built with WAMP. Well, multiplayer calculator. That's all I've wanted this whole time. The one thing I was trying to see if I could do is grab environment variables, but it seems like tokens are the only thing. Understandable. Their goal here is to serve Astro users. I was going to try and hack in a next binding or connection here. I don't think it's worth it, I'll be honest. I just wanted to showcase their intended use here. I'm sure we'll have plenty of ways to abuse this in the future, but for now, I want to showcase what it's meant to be used for. And for those wondering about pricing, which I probably should have mentioned before, the base plan, super generous. You get a gig of storage included, you get 1 billion row reads included, and 1 million row writes included. And then every million additional reads is 0.1 cent. So every 10 million would be a cent. And then another $1 per million writes. That's pretty solid. That's fair and reasonable, especially if you use indexes and things properly to lower those reads. This is fair. And no credit card required until you need to go over those tiers. It will just lock you down otherwise. I'm pretty excited. It's cool seeing frameworks taking data, databases, and content more seriously. Curious what you guys think, though. Let me know in the comments. Is this something exciting to you, scary? You're going to check out Astro more or avoid it entirely? Let me know. I'm genuinely curious. Until next time, peace, nerds.